Hey everyone, welcome back to the arena. I'm MD, joined here by Kobe, as well as another special guest that we can't wait to have a conversation with. Before we jump in, love and appreciation to those who continue to follow us, as well as those that haven't found us quite yet, but we still love you.
Uh, Thank you, MD, for that beautiful introduction. So we've got another awesome guest here. His name is Kute Blackson. Just for a little bit of background on Kute, he's an inspirational speaker, author, transformational teacher, and coach to people in all walks of life. He's most famous for his intensive, transformative experiences. He also speaks at countless events he organizes around the world. Youngest member to been voted into the Transformational Leadership Council. And finally, he's a winner of the 2019 Unity New Thought Walden Award, among a bunch of other things. So, Kute is a very impressive individual. We're super, super thankful and grateful to have him on. Without further ado, Kute, why don't you just provide a background of kind of who is Kute Blackson and how you got to where you are today?
Wow, how long do we have, guys? I'll try to give you the short version. Who am I? I think that's a question that I've taken much of my life to explore. Who am I? What am I? I was born in Ghana, West Africa. My father's from Ghana, my mother's Japanese. I grew up in London. I live in Los Angeles, live in the US. So I've always felt like I'm a citizen of the world. And actually, that question of who am I is something I've asked myself because I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. Didn't feel like I was black or African, didn't feel like I was Japanese, didn't feel like I was British. And so it really put me on the path of spiritual seeking to ask myself, who am I and where do I belong and what is my true nature? And that drove me very deeply to try to understand life and the nature of reality. And so as a young boy, I had a bit of an unusual childhood. I thought my childhood was quite normal, but I'm kind of told it wasn't. In that, my first memories as a young boy was seeing a crippled woman. I'll never forget, pick up the sand, the gravel that this man walked on, wiped it on her face and stood up. And so week after week, I grew up seeing miracles. Blind people see and deaf people hear and people stand up out of wheelchairs. And the same man whose gravel she picked up would look at a woman in a wheelchair and say, hey, stand up. Why are you sick? Why are you in this? Why are you sitting down? And then look at somebody with crutches and say, hey, why throw your crutches away? And people would often say to me, was that shit real? Did that really happen? Was it a scam? And just so happens that this guy was my father. And my father built 300 churches in Ghana, West Africa, a huge church in London. He was a very spiritual guy, not just a religious guy. So I was blessed to grow up in this spiritual context with a father who was a minister, a mother who was Buddhist, grew up meditating with her. And so age 8 is when my speaking career began. And I started speaking in my father's churches. Age 14, I was ordained as a minister. And I was given the mandate to take over my father's organization. But I knew that that wasn't my path. And I was just too afraid to speak my truth. My fear, like many of us, I allowed fear to hijack me. And I think my fear was if I really dare to be who I am, then I won't be loved. If I dare to be who I am, then I'm going to lose love. And so I said nothing. And from 14 to 18, I tried to fit myself to be who I thought the world wanted me to be. And by the time I got to be 18 is when my life really shifted. And I felt a calling in my soul to come to America. You asked how long I've been in Los Angeles. I've been here 20 some years. I came at a very young age. And I felt my soul calling me to come to America because I wanted to go into the field of personal growth. All of the self-help books I read as a child, and I read many because I would sneak into my father's bookshelf, into my father's office and steal his books on spirituality and meditation, and Wayne Dyer, Louise Hay, Deepak Chopra, Marianne Williamson, and on and on. Most of these people lived in LA, in Southern California. So I decided I wanted to come and meet these people and go into this field. And I think sometimes what your soul guides you to do doesn't always make sense to your logic or your mind. What your soul guides you to do is not always comfortable or convenient, but I really believe that when you follow your soul and when you follow your guidance, you will always end up in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing with the right people. And so I had a conversation with my father, left everything behind, renounced everything. As I looked into my future, I saw that I could take over my father's churches and I could become successful. But if I didn't have myself, if I wasn't following my own soul, if I wasn't in integrity with myself, what kind of success is that? And so I left everything behind and came to the US. Longer story short, won a green card in the green card lottery. won a green card in the green card lottery, it's true, and showed up to LA, 2 suitcases, $800 in my pocket, 18 years old, and began my journey. And it's been a hell of a journey. Went and found the mentors, teachers, many of the folks I read about, studied with some of them, and then I ended up going to Israel, studying with some rabbis, walking the Camino in northern Spain for a month, 900 kilometers in search of answers, and all roads led me to India. And it was my time in India that really cracked me open to another level of understanding myself and my purpose. And that's when I came back about 20 years ago and began working with people one-on-one. And it just evolved and grew. I just wanted to help people, and out of the pure desire to be of service in some way, one person showed up and another person showed up and another person and I devised my own way of working with people, and then it sort of grew to small groups and larger groups and larger groups and 2 books, and so here we are. That's the short version.
So you said at one point, kind of later on in your story, that you cracked into a new sense of self when you got to India, a new sense of purpose. Like describe what that looks like, both internally and just like how that felt, how you were able to come to that kind of feeling, that conclusion, whatever it might be. Just talk through that process a little bit.
Wow, it's a long, nuanced process, but I basically shaved my head. I put everything in storage. I broke up with my girlfriend. And I said that I'm not coming back to America until I find answers. I'm not coming back. And America is the only place I wanted to come to. And I think I should give a bit of backstory because it sets the context where at the age of 20, I had a vision to be the next Oprah. And I started pitching a TV show. And I wanted to do a TV talk show and being Oprah for the new generation. And so I began to basically track down every single entertainment person I knew of. Found the heads of William Morris, the heads of CAA, the heads of ICM, David Geffen, Steven Spielberg, tracked Steven Spielberg down in a soccer field, tracked Richard Branson down in a hotel, tracked Arna Milchan down, you name it, I tracked them down. I didn't know who these people were. I researched them, but I was so hell-bent on making this show happen because I was so sure about what I thought my future looked like that I was literally obsessed. And I got so much rejection. And the turning point came because one time I met these managers and they represented Michael Jackson, Mariah Carey, Jennifer Lopez, Leonardo DiCaprio, Backstreet Boys, Dolly Parton. And I thought, wow, I read about these guys and I thought these guys have some vision. So I wrote them a letter and they invited me to their office on Sunset Boulevard and I pitched them for 40 minutes non-stop. And they looked at each other and they said, you're going to be huge and we can make you huge. We're going to make you into a star. And I felt so excited. And they said, come back tomorrow. Here's the contract. Let's begin. I went home and I meditated that day. I'll never forget. And all I heard in my gut, that feeling in your gut, all I heard was no, don't do it. I'm like, what the hell? Like, this is all I've wanted. And everything in my gut, to my soul, said no. And I was mad, I was pissed off, I was angry because I really wanted to sign with these guys. But I knew that this feeling of inner guidance is what guided me to leave London, is what guided me to win the green card. Whenever I follow this internal guidance, it always leads me in the right direction. And when I don't, shit doesn't work out well. And so I decided to listen begrudgingly. And that's what sort of spun me into a funk, And I said, I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do with my life anymore. What I thought was, isn't, and I'm confused. And so I felt like I reached the edge of my ego's capacity to make my life happen. And that's when I threw my arms up in the air and I said, I don't know. And I started traveling. So with that context, I ended up in India and I had, I was there for 4 months and I had many, many, many spiritual experiences, revelations, understandings. I basically went through a process of, shall we say, unconditioning myself from the patterns and programs. Because in many ways, we've all been conditioned. We just don't know that we've been conditioned. We think that who we are is who we are, but it's not. we have become conditioned versions of ourselves based on childhood and past experience, and the version of ourselves that we've become is just who we think we are. And based on that conditioned sense of self and identity, really believing that, we now set goals and we set dreams and visions. But if we're not in touch with who we are, how the hell are our dreams going to be aligned and authentic? And so, and I think this is why many times you might sometimes achieve and attain in the world what you thought you wanted, the car, the house, the Lamborghini, the whatever, only to then realize, wait a second, it's not what I really wanted, because it's just what I thought I wanted based on who I thought I was. And often our goals can be projections of unmet needs from childhood. Goals can be projections of, I didn't feel enough, didn't feel worthy, didn't feel good enough. So if I can just attain that thing, then I'm going to be enough, you know? And so for me, I went through a process in India of questioning everything about myself, questioning who I am, questioning what I believe, questioning how I see the world, questioning my assumptions about life, myself, my identity, you know, my stories. And it's scary, you know, the ego that we could, look, when we're born, we're born free, right? You look at a child, like, you guys remember when you were a kid? I mean, maybe we all have glimpses of when we were a kid. We would just jump on the table naked. We didn't care what people thought about us. We didn't care about haters in the world. We would sing. We didn't care if we didn't sound like Bruno Mars or, you know, Beyonce or you know, Harry Kane. We were just being free, fully expressed, fully alive. We would draw, and until someone said, hey, you can't draw. That's not that great. Be quiet. Don't be that way. Why did you only why can't you be more like your brother? And so slowly, so here we are, these bright beings in touch with our infinite nature. We incarnate to this human experience. We meet our parents. And our parents, God bless them, they're just doing the best that they know how to do based on their childhood and their conditioning and their grandparents. And maybe dad is crazy. Maybe mom is an alcoholic. Maybe they're fighting all the time. Maybe they got divorced and that was painful. And maybe we felt abandoned by mom or dad. Or maybe they were just nice people, but we just did not have our emotional needs met in some way. And that was painful too, to not feel our emotional needs met, to feel helpless. And so two things happen where the conditioning process starts. The first thing is we learn all sorts of strategies to shut down, disconnect, and not feel. Let me suppress the pain, suppress the hurt, suppress, layers build up. We close our hearts. Now we become disconnected from our body, from our feeling, from our sensitivity, and we go into the mind, sort of mentalizing, analyzing, become super analytical. Now our heart is not open as a form of control, because when I used to feel, that was painful. Now if I just shut my heart down, build a wall, become independent, I don't freaking need anybody, right? Don't need the world, don't need my parents, don't need God, don't need life, don't need anyone. I don't need nothing. And so now we kind of like become closed as a self-protective mechanism. And then we also learn a strategy of, who do I need to be in order to get love and validation and approval? Oh, when I'm this way, dad loves me. When I'm that way, mom loves me. So we contort ourselves into the shape of who we think we need to be to get love, validation, and approval. And we become a prison of our own roles and masks and personas. And so the degree to which we're conditioned is the degree to which we're not free. And so in India, I had to go through my own, shall we say, self-guided process of unraveling my conditioning and questioning everything about myself. And I would say one of the ways that we stay stuck, that I think if someone's wondering, where do I start? Where do I begin? One of the ways that we stay stuck, that I had to sort of really uncover and unravel, are all the lies that we tell ourselves. For the reasons I've just shared, as human beings, we're constantly lying to ourselves. We betray ourselves to get love, validation, and approval, which is a lie. We stay in relationships that we know are not aligned. We work jobs that we hate, that sometimes compromise our integrity. And we wonder, why do I not feel happy? Why do I not feel alive? Why do I not feel energy? Why do I not feel connected? And so I think if someone really wants to shift, which is what I had to really go through in an intense way, if someone really wants a breakthrough, you have to be willing to start with the truth. The truth will set you free. So I'd invite people to ask themselves, what lies am I telling myself? What lies am I telling myself? You have to want to be free more than you want what you have. You have to want to be free more than you want what you think you want. And I think when we can start telling ourselves the truth, I would say truth is real spiritual practice. Truth is real yoga. Truth is real meditation. And so what lies am I telling myself? I would even then say take the pressure off of yourself of having to even take any action, because sometimes the fear of the consequence of telling the truth is what kind of blocks us, right? And so if we can just say, okay, I don't have to take action, but let me tell the truth. The truth might sound like, I hate my job. You don't have to leave. I'm not in love with this person anymore. You don't have to break up. You know, I have an alcohol problem. No more rationalizing and negotiating. I have a problem with alcohol. I have a problem with weed. Yeah, I have a problem with it. In order to shift something, you have to acknowledge where you are at. And so what I did in India was a deep inner introspection and a process of self-reflection and questioning and self-awareness that was a inner excavation of my soul, so to speak.
So there was an interview you did where somebody had asked you what happens when we die, and you had answered, I don't know, but how am I living life is the question instead. And I think what you just described is you're living a life, since India and that experience, you're living a life that is free of conditions and that is totally truthful to what you perceive as your purpose. Hopefully I'm understanding that correctly, but can you walk me through what does that look like practically speaking in the day in the life of someone like you who is living free of those conditions?
Yeah, look, I would say I'm living as freely as I can, right? Because the truth is, I'm not Buddha, and I'm not Jesus, right? I'm just good. I'm a human being doing the best I can to grow and evolve and live in my own integrity and fulfill the potential I have, right? And that's just being human. So the goal is not perfection. The goal is just progress and growth and expansion and more freedom and more freedom and more freedom. And so what does it look like? It just looks like feeling the truth, acknowledging the truth, feeling my feelings, letting them go. It looks like speaking my truth and communicating my truth to those around me so that I can be in integrity with myself and I can be in integrity with those around me. And it looks like keeping my word, being in integrity in that way. It looks like showing up as much as possible and having an orientation of life that is about service. That doesn't mean you can't make money and have a business, but as much as I think when you live a life that is all about you, you will suffer and you will not be happy. When you live a life that is simply about what can I get, acquisition, what can I get? At some point you get the watch and the car and the house, and it's like, well, how many pairs of underpants can Elon Musk wear? You know, how many watches can Elon Musk have? Right? How many Ferraris can Bill Gates drive at one time? And the truth is, at some point you reach a point of dissatisfaction. Maybe you've had this experience where you ate your favorite food every day for like 20 days. At some point it's like, I can't take it anymore. You know, so for me, dissatisfaction is a sign of growth. And so I would just say, there's a shift that happens as you grow and evolve, where your life becomes less focused on getting and more focused on giving and service and contribution. Because at the end of the day, you don't take anything with you. We will all die, right? We're all gonna die. You, me, Bob Marley, Bruce Lee. If Bruce Lee died and Bob Marley died and Muhammad Ali died and Mandela died, you and I are surely gonna die, right? These guys were superheroes. And so we take nothing with us, man, other than the evolution of our consciousness and the lessons that we learned and the impact that we had in humanity in the lives that we touched. That's our legacy. And so a life that is about you is a limited life. But when you're living a life that is bigger than just your need, and I'm not saying it's not good to pay the rent and have a great car and, you know, a great life and a nice vacation, but there reaches a point where your sense and reference of life expands beyond yourself to include more and to include more and then to include the world. And I think that's, for me, how I endeavor to. I don't always succeed, but that's how I endeavor to live. It's like, how can I be a contribution? How can I serve? How can I make the world better? How can I solve problems? How can I serve humanity in some way? So my life is more oriented in a daily sense in terms of my actions. How can I be of service? You know.
So you'd mentioned, and first of all, I resonated with that deeply on the act of service piece. But you mentioned we're often telling ourselves lies. So I guess two questions there. What are some common lies that you see people tell themselves? And then for you personally, like, what lies were you ultimately telling yourself? I mean, for me, like, we don't know each other very well, but like my sexuality was a place of extreme guilt, shame, and I would tell myself, no, you're straight. Like, you're not this way. Okay. And I was constantly going against what was ultimately who I am. So that's one that came up for me, but I'm just curious, like, generally what you see and kind of what you personally struggled with.
You know, I think for me, I would say what I see, and I struggled with this for a while. I'll take a universal one. This lie of, like, I'm unlovable, right? I think many of us can probably relate to that in some way. I'm not worthy. I'm unlovable, right? I'm unworthy. I'm not lovable. I'm not lovable. I'm not lovable. And sometimes the sort of deep-rooted shame that we carry about feeling that I'm not lovable. And I had to ask myself a long time ago, why is it so hard to let that go? Like, you do these affirmations, I'm worthy, I'm lovable, it's like, I still don't feel lovable, you know? It's like, I don't feel I can let love in. And so what I realize is this, and maybe if someone's struggling with this, that this might help a little bit. Why is it so hard to let go of the deep-rooted shame or feeling or belief that I'm unlovable? When I sat with it and I did a deep exploration, I saw for myself and many people that it's kind of rooted in control. In a strange way, in control. Because here's the deal. If I hold on to the belief that I am unlovable, which is not true, but if I believe it to be true, it creates suffering. If I believe it to be true, I tend to create experiences and look for people in relationships to reinforce what I believe about myself so I can say, yeah, see, he cheated on me, she left me, I'm unlovable. We'll tend to create experiences that reinforce the belief about ourselves. And so if I believe that I'm not lovable, here's the thing. I have some kind of control. It's an illusion of control. It's like, what? Yes. If I believe I'm not lovable, then I have a false sense of control. Because if it's about me, then maybe I can do something about it. What do you mean? Maybe I can get a six-pack. Maybe I can go to the gym and bulk up and be lovable. Maybe I can, make $2 billion and get the Lamborghini and be lovable. Maybe I can dye my hair color. Maybe I can change my breast size. Maybe I can, do Botox. Maybe I can, run a marathon. Maybe I can save the world. Maybe I can do something, have control over it in the world to then finally feel and get love from those around me. And that's the sort of attachment to why that belief for me and many others is actually hard to let go of. It's rooted in control. Because the truth that we have to kind of acknowledge, I had to acknowledge this with my father, because I felt like he didn't really love me, What I had to acknowledge was, it's not about me. But we have to acknowledge it. It's not about you. It's that they, your dad, your mom, the caregiver, they were not capable. And part of why that is so hard for the ego is to really acknowledge that they were not capable. You don't have control over that. You don't have control over them. you can't control them. And that for the ego can feel scary. It's like, shit, if I don't have control, then maybe I'm not going to feel lovable. But if I'm not lovable and I hold on to that belief, maybe I can constantly be doing something to get to be lovable. And so I think we have to sort of acknowledge, oh, it's not about me. It's they weren't capable. And that is a reality, but it moves you into a process of death and grieving, because then you realize you might never get the love that you wanted from mom and dad or that person. And it's like, that's a heartbreak. But if you're willing to go through that heartbreak, then you can start letting go of that belief system and start questioning that belief system. And as you start questioning that belief system, it's like, what if that wasn't true? What else could it mean? What else might be true about me? And so the ego is that which we mistakenly perceive ourselves to be based on past experiences and belief systems that we hold on to. And the ego's job, well intended, is to protect you from getting hurt and to reinforce its existence. So the ego doesn't want to change. The ego wants everyone else to change, but the ego doesn't want to change. And so for me, letting go of the belief that I'm not lovable was a tough one, you know. And so I would attract beautiful women in relationships in my 20s, I remember, and just wanted to love me. And just for some reason, I was not able to receive it. It's like, you know, if you really knew who I was, you wouldn't love me. And I would push them away and I would do stupid things, and because I'm not lovable. So how would this beautiful woman love me, you know? And so that's how it kind of acted out for me until I realized, wow, I am lovable. It's not about me. It was never about me. I've always been lovable. And wow, then we can bring the healing to those parts of ourselves that are hurting.
So, as far as perceiving yourself as unlovable, were you able to draw back to or connect dots from your childhood as to why you ended up thinking that of yourself?
For sure. I mean, without belaboring a point, but for me, my father built 300 churches, as I mentioned, in Ghana, West Africa, and he was gone a lot, gone much of the time, serving the world, serving humanity, serving people. And his focus was, you know, extremely focused in a, I think, limited way on the outside rather than the inside. And so he never made time to come to my football games and my soccer games and my class PTAs, you know, never once saw him at my soccer game, my karate matches, my nothing, swim meets, right? And so I think deep down in my subconscious, I started feeling I'm not worth it. I'm not worth it. I'm not worth it. I'm not lovable. If he loved me, right? And so that closeness with my father also didn't develop. And so through that, I just kind of felt like I'm not lovable. I'm not worthy. And that's what kind of created that. Even though I felt profound love for my mom, it was really the interpretation that was a false interpretation that I made about myself. And that's the thing we have to understand is many of the beliefs that we have are fiction, not fact. But we relate to them like they are fact. And they become effectively a fact to us, even though they are fiction. And we don't question those beliefs. And so we have to learn to question those beliefs. An event happens, we make an interpretation and a meaning about the event that happens, that now becomes our reality and we hold that belief. Then we go through life seeking to validate that belief in all of our experiences. And as a result, we will draw to us people that reflect to us the unlovability, or we will draw out of people that are in our lives energetic sort of behaviors that make us feel that way. And I felt that way often, you know, because there was a certain imprint in my consciousness. And so I think it's important for us to ask ourselves, when a certain event happens, we make it mean something. Could it have meant anything else? I'm unlovable. Could it have meant anything else? And what I had to realize that it meant, as I mentioned, was it wasn't that I was unlovable. It was just my dad's not capable. He didn't have the tools. His dad didn't love him. his family wasn't around. He was kind of abandoned as a kid growing up in Africa, a very old school world. So he just literally did not have the capacity in that moment to know how to love me as his son. And so that was a profound acceptance and realization of, oh, it wasn't about me. It wasn't personal.
Maybe, so you talked a lot about thus far your relationship with your father. Can you just talk about your relationship with your mother, maybe how it was different relative to your father, or similar in any ways?
Yeah, what do you want to know?
Just, I mean, you mentioned, I think, that your mother was very loving. It sounded like your father showed love in maybe some different ways. So we'd just love to kind of understand the comparing, contrasting of the two types.
My mother, for me, beautiful Japanese being, woman, I would say that I know love in this lifetime. I knew love in this lifetime because of my mother. And I'm aware how blessed I am. And I'm aware because I work with many people and realize that not everybody has that relationship with their mom. And for me, prior to meeting my wife, for me, my mother was the reason that I knew what love felt like. And I could say, I know I have been loved in my life. And the psychological, psychic, energetic, spiritual, emotional foundation and blessing that's not even conscious, it's just the foundation of your being, of being loved just that unconditionally, was such a holding space that it allowed me to grow healthily, or somewhat healthily, right, as a kid and as an adult. And it was a profound blessing, It wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't anything like bright. It was just the solid foundation of knowing I am loved no matter what. And it was just, my mother, I was telling someone the other day, my mother was not a flashy person. My dad was kind of flashy. My mother was not a flashy person. My mother was a simple person, very simple, but so humble. My mother it wasn't about what my mom said. There's a lot of people that talk a good talk, can say the right words, can wine and dine you and romance you and get you roses and flowers and, big gifts in those special occasions. But my mother, it wasn't what she said, it was her actions. She showed up every day. She was present every day. She loved me every day. For my mother, it wasn't words and flashy sentences. It was love in action. It was her kindness. My mother was kind, and that's why I really got that real spirituality. It's not about just fancy meditations and raising your, kundalini and doing plant medicine and going to Machu Picchu and doing vegan food and, the right supplements and wearing the right sort of mala beads and doing the right yoga posture and, being a yoga Reiki certified master. And real spirituality is how you live your life. And my mother is someone that, the way she lived her life, doesn't matter if it was the smallest thing or the biggest thing, if it was on stage or if it was cleaning the toilet, she was kind and was about being of service without ego, not in it just for herself. And she loved me with that selflessness, and she showed up very purely in kindness to people around her. And that was a huge blessing. My mother died in 2017 of stomach cancer. And it was really tough for me because she was like, I loved her the most. And you don't really realize, your parents are going to die, but you don't realize it until it happens. Like, oh shit, they're gonna die. Like, it's real. They're not gonna live forever, And I thought I had time, man. I don't know if any of your parents have died, but I thought I had time. And I remember I began flying, my mother lives in London, and I began flying back and forth from Los Angeles to London every single month for 1 week to be with my mom, to just be with her in a chemo session, to just love her, talk to her. And the only regret I have in my life, is not spending more time with my mom. Because I thought I had time. And I was so busy flying around the world, helping people, inspiring people, writing books, doing seminars. I didn't have time. I'm just too busy just going, hang out with my mom. Like, it's got to be something important, and we'll do something epic down the road. But when she was dying and I would hold her hand in chemo, and we would just talk about like literally nothing important, I saw that it's like, why the hell did I wait till she was dying just to make these moments? You know, that there's no ordinary moments. Every moment was incredibly special. And I remember the doctors finally saying to my mom and I, you're going to die. I mean, they say it in a nice way, but they basically say you're going to die. We don't know how long. It's days, it's weeks, it's months maybe if you're lucky. And I was crying because I looked my mother in the eyes and I realized, shit, she's never going to see my kids. She's never going to meet my wife. She's never going to, like, all of the dreams that I had in my mind, I'm not going to be able to do those with her. And I cried and looked my mother in the eyes. And this is a moment, and this will tell you who my mother really is. And perhaps why I am who I am. I looked her in the eyes and I said, Mom, are you afraid? And my mother simply looked me in the eyes, you know, in the face of like, she's been told she's going to die. And she said, I'm not afraid because I know I'm not this body. This body is a temporary vehicle for my soul. This body is going to die. It will. But my soul is beyond birth and beyond death. And it's an eternal, what I am is eternal. And when I die, I will be guiding you from the other side. And I looked my mother in the eyes and I said, Mom, what can I do for you? I want to be a good son in your final days. What can I do for you? What can I buy you? What can I? And she said, this is my mom, right? She said, there's nothing I need. There's nothing I want. The only thing I want and the only thing I need is what God wants for my life. That's my mom. And I realized in that moment she was free. I realized her true greatness. Like, I'm like, shit, this is my mom. She's like an enlightened being. I didn't even know, you know, but so humble. And I realized she wasn't attached to living. She wasn't attached to dying. She was surrendered to God. She was surrendered to the highest unfolding of her soul's journey. And for me, that was her greatness.
Kute, you talked about your mother's unconditional love while she was alive. By the way, thank you, and sorry. As far as the unconditional love and how it enhanced, you mentioned it enhanced your life, and then you're kind of up and coming, traveling a lot, spending less time with her, living, and having these experiences in life. Did you experience any guilt with that? Like, while she was alive, did you ever think, like, I'm not spending enough time, and maybe the experiences I have, I wish she was experiencing these things and living my life?
No, it wasn't guilt, because I think, when she was dying, I felt regret.
Yeah.
I'm like, shit. But, when you're kind of young, you don't realize. I'm like, shit, I wished I got this 15 years ago. But the challenge is, you can't get it when you're 21. You can't. Why? Because you're 21, and you have to go through this stuff to really be able to like get it, to go, oh, this is what's important. You got to go through it and have your heart kind of broken open to go, oh, this is what is actually important. And so, for instance, it happened and it changed me. And it made me more ready and ripe to be a husband to my wife, to be a father to my child. Because maybe had that not happened, I would have, I don't want to say repeated the pattern of my father, but I might have been less inclined to appreciate the simple moments of life, and just being present with them. Because up until that point, it was like, let's change the world. Let's serve the world. And it's like, oh, just sometimes being in the park, Like my favorite moments now in life, you say, what are the most epic moments, days of your, it is those moments when I'm holding my baby boy in the morning while he's waking up, doing nothing. Favorite moments on my birthday was not really about going to like Machu Picchu. It's just me, my wife, and my baby boy sitting in a coffee shop, just shooting the shit, and just being together. It's like the ordinary moments become at least have become for me through the experience, right, with my mom, so sacred. What I realized, there's no ordinary moments, man. Like when my mother died, I thought what I would give to just be able to sit there and waste time with my mom. I would give it all just to sit there and like shoot the shit and waste time. But I didn't have time to waste before. I'm like, I would have all the time to waste with my mom now. But it took experience. It takes experiences sometimes to realize and be humbled by life. And that was just part of my path. I don't feel guilt. I realized, how else could I learn? And so long as I learn and don't repeat those cycles in my relationship with my child, then that's part of evolution, and that's how we grow, and that's how we evolve, and that's how we become more and become better.
So Cute, I've got one more question here before we wrap up, and it's kind of along the lines of, you mentioned your mother just being an extremely kind person, and there's something you put on your social media, and it said, "Don't confuse kindness with weakness.
Yeah.
Only the true strong have the courage to be kind."
Yeah.
Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Because I think it's it's very well said, but would love for you to elaborate a little bit.
I mean, I think the statement speaks for itself, but it doesn't take strength. When someone attacks you, calls you some names, treats you like crap, it doesn't take strength to like slap them back. It doesn't take a lot of strength to like screw them over, to shame, like to beat them up metaphorically. That doesn't take strength. What takes strength is to turn the other cheek. By turn the other cheek, I'm not saying lie there and be a victim and let them stomp all over you. I'm saying they threw hate at you. Can you not react? And can you be strong enough to throw kindness and courage? Like that takes strength. That's the real flex, to not just respond like with like. Can you take the higher road? Can you turn the other cheek and say, you know what? I'm not going to contribute to that energy. I'm not going to let them determine who I'm going to be. I'm going to dare to love. And maybe like that takes courage. That takes real strength. And so, you look at an example of someone like Jesus, and it's not in a religious context, just as a possibility of a story. I grew up in the church, so this is something I remember, like he's getting crucified, they stick a spear in his side, and he says something like, rather than saying, hey, well, screw all these people, he's like, forgive them, they don't know what they do. Like, that's kindness, And so sometimes to be able to look at those that hate on us or attack us and say, you know what? I had an example the other day, person in a UPS store. I was with my wife. The guy's with a complete, I won't mention it online. you get my point. A complete beep. And there was a moment, because he was being rude to my wife, and she was holding my child, and I was like, this is not cool. And my protectors go like, huh? And then I just kind of softened a little bit and realized I just posted that comment on social media. So I'm like, let me practice my own comment. And I realized, yeah, the guy's not acting right. And I said, hey, bro, is everything okay? Rather than being like, well, F you too. It's like, yo, everything okay? Are you good? Like, what, And that was my way of just, in a kind way, say, hey, there's a boundary, but are we cool? And I think part of the kindness is realizing that everybody is also facing and in a struggle. that we don't always know about. Sometimes that person that is reacting that way, maybe they've been raped and abused by their parents for 12 years. And just to wake up in the morning is a freaking miracle. And even though they're not really acting loving, it's a miracle that they even can function. And if you and I went through what they went through, we probably would be acting a similar way, you know? And so I think to be willing to extend grace to another human, because it's not easy being human, man. We've all been through some shit. We've all been through things as children. And I think as a humanity, it's tough. And so I think being kind is just realizing the human experience is difficult, and having the courage to be kind is part of the solution.
Yeah, no, that's very well said, Kute. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your wisdom and your story. We really appreciate it. So thanks again, Kute. How can people get in touch with you? How can they find you if they want to contact you?
Appreciate it, guys. A couple of ways I would say, look, check out the book, The Magic of Surrender. It's available on Amazon. I think there's so many gems in the book that will answer a lot of questions for you and add a lot of value. Get the paperback version. For those that might feel called to take a deeper dive, and maybe you feel called to go to the next level of your life and transform, this December I'm doing a very special live event in Bali, Indonesia. It's my signature event, and it's probably the most transformational work that I do. It's 12 days in Bali with me, a small group, 18 people, and we dive deep, and I take you through a proven process that is designed to help you heal and transform. It's called Boundless Bliss, the Bali Breakthrough Experience, December the 5th through the 16th. You can go to www.boundlessblissbali.com. That's boundlessblissbali.com. Find out more info there, and also say hi on Instagram, Kute Blackson.
Thanks again, Kute.
Thank you.